Sir, do you have anything else before? Okay, all right. It's 1300. Let's make it happen.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. On behalf of the Sergeant Major and I, we're excited about what's going to happen today. So look at that quote up there. Look at that quote up there. We're going to talk today about some little things and some big things. Try to let you relate a little bit to where we're coming from and who we are and where we're going. We'll talk about the ROE in a second. But communication starts today and we go forward together today. Next slide. All right, this is the outline. We're going to go until we're done. Work our way down there to a breakout session. I'm going to take the officers, or leave the officers right here, and I'm going to be real candid with you about the OCMB process, and about battalion command selection, and about War College. No slides, just me to you, all right? And the Sergeant Major is going to do something similar with the NCOs, and Chief Gordon is going to take the warrant officers, I think, upstairs and talk about a bunch of good stuff. We'll come back together, do a little bit of guidance. Then we're going to go down to Eagles Pride, the golf course, and have a leaders call. It's a voluntary event. Encourage all of you to go. Go down there and stay as long as you like. And then we'll get up in the morning. We'll meet on Camp Murray at 07 by the parade field. Rain or shine. Rain or shine. Do some PT together. The golf course event today, this evening, is sponsored by a local insurance company and NGAW, by Geico and NGAW. Now look, there's a lot of great associations out there. AUSA is one of them. All the branches have good associations, but a great one is the National Guard Association of Washington. All right, I'm not gonna mess around with talking about NGAW. Here's what I promise. Sergeant Major's gonna hold me accountable to it. Sergeant Major Sweeney's gonna hold me accountable to this. I will never ask for or look at a list of who is in our association. I will never do it. I will never ask for or look at a list of membership of the National Guard Association of Washington. I will never value you less or more if you're in that association. I will never value you less or more if you attend the annual conference. But I'm telling you, from my mouth to your ears, I encourage every one of you in this room to join our association. It advocates for your soldiers in ways that you don't even know. In ways that you don't even know. Doesn't cost that much, and it gives us influence. And we're professionals. So I encourage you to join. Hope that didn't freak at least 3 people out in here too bad. But I don't really care, because I'm just too excited today to slow down with anything. So let's go to the next slide. Here's the ROE. So we are in this together. We are doing this to cut through the fog, right? We are slaves to tyranny, geography, time. And I'm impatient. And I wanted to bring as many leaders as I can to hear our message about where we want to go, learn about us, ask questions. Again, talk about those little things and big things so we get started off together the right way. So when I say engage and be bold, be bold. Officers, NCOs alike, stand up, ask questions, question us. We're humans just like you. We're inquisitive just like you. Ask questions. All of you that have received my personal feedback know one thing. I crave candid feedback. I'll never hold it against you. Never hold it against you. In fact, I value you more for it. So let's get this right today. Let's talk about stuff that you want to talk about. Engage with us and ask us questions. Anything to add here, Sergeant Major?
No, we're good, sir.
Next slide. All right, just a couple intros real quick. I want to talk about the term Rainier. So we don't have at the Army level a call sign. Guardians, JFHQ, most of the MSCs have your own call sign. The Sergeant Major and I, over about a 2-month process, figured out that we settled on Rainier because it's in our history. It meant a lot to the original Guardsmen in the state. Iconic thing, even settling the west side of this, as they moved from the east side to the west side of the state. And it's important to me. I've stood on top of that rock more than 20 times. Who, Roger? Every time going up that mountain, it takes a few things that resonate with our message. An exquisite individual effort, a small team that comes together that has to operate at a very basic level, but that basic level has to be mastery. You've got to know some of the basic mastered tasks of glacier travel and mountaineering. And it takes a leader of a small team that can make decisions and manage risk. That sounds like soldier first, right, Sergeant Major?
Cool.
So we're batting this back and forth. And he texted me and said, we got it. So we came up with that. So I'd like to introduce you for the first time publicly, Rainier 7.
Hey, good afternoon, team. So, I've worked with a lot of people in this room over the last almost 20 years now, either hand in hand or on deployments. So, a little bit about me. Who here was in the military in the 80s? Holy crap. Okay. 90s. So now if you've joined since 2000, let me see your hand. Wow. Now, this is nothing against anybody who just joined since 2000, but listen to what I'm going to tell you. The Army is going back to what it was in the 90s, what it was in the 80s, the way we train, the way we fight. My mic's not on. How about now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Sergeant Major.
Outstanding. So, we're going back to the way we fought in the 80s and the 90s, the near-peer threats, right? Russia, China. That's what we're training for. That's the way we're developing the Army again, because we're looking at that as our biggest threat. I bring that up because I joined in the 90s. I was on active duty. I went through the drawdowns. I spent time Korea, Thailand, the Philippines, Panama, Japan. Spent about 24 months total in the States. Everything else was in the Asian theater. I was separated from my family all the time, about 7 years out of 9. So kind of file that in the back of your head. Why do I bring up the way we're going to fight? File that in the back of your head. Use those concepts or those thoughts as we look at what we're going to present to you today. Kind of our vision and how we're going forward. I'm married. I have a college-age son that is a hellion. He's got horns. They hold the halo up to everybody else. I love bird hunting, running dogs, and I enjoy my time off. My civilian job is I work for Pierce County Sheriff's Department. So I see the worst in people nearly every day. So for the next 2 years now, November 22, I'll be in this seat full time. So if you have questions, you need to address those questions towards me through the Army Chain of Command.
Who's Sergeant Major?
Rainier 6.
All right, I'm Dan Dent, Rainier 6. Dedicated husband to my wife of 30 years, high school sweetheart, father of three daughters, the luckiest man in the world to be with you in command of this outfit and a soldier. It's my bio. Next slide. I want to talk about the command team in two parts. This command team here, all right, this first part, this is a command team we model at Echelon. Myself, the Sergeant Major, and the chaplain. So Sergeant Major and I have bonded in a uniquely exquisite way in the last few months. See the world the same way. And you're going to hear what guys like me always say. There's no daylight between me and the Sergeant Major, and we speak with one voice. Well, we're going to prove it to you. So that's enough of that. The chaplain. Many of you may not have heard this context on a command team, but those of you who have served with me before in a command relationship know that I value the chaplain as an equal member of this command team. He is my greatest censor. This particular human has to be also one of the greatest friends of my life, and an intense counselor and mentor to me. And I deploy him like a weapon throughout this formation. We're going to talk about leader development and how we assess it from the bottom up. Well, my chaplain is going to be a big part of that. When we talk about soldiers and impacts to their families, my chaplain will be a big part of that. And he will deploy a unit ministry team across this formation that's going to knock your socks off. I'm going to demand at Echelon, chaplains are employed that way. So this is the three that modeled at Echelon is the command team. And I just get the pleasure of being stuck in there. Next slide. Now this is the broader team. Okay, the broader team. The work from the bottom up. The executive assistant. Anybody want to hazard a guess who the executive assistant is? Kathy Sin. Kathy Sin. I'm just going to talk about it. I talked to Kathy today. I said, hey, I'm going to talk about you today. Well, I need to express to you that she's a part of this team. She controls my calendar. She shapes engagements. She's got a frame of reference that's ridiculous. She's a part of this team. She works closely with the chief. and she helps me see things in ways that I wouldn't otherwise see. The command chief. The command chief is the technical advisor to this command in all matters of technicality across the warrant officer cohort. He's also the supreme allied commander of the warrant officer cohort. But more importantly, on this team, this is not a traditional thing to keep the CCWO right there. But in this case, he's there because I value him in a really important way, based on his frame of reference and experience as a human. And I spent a lot of time talking to him about stuff, all sorts of stuff. So he's right there with us. And the chief. Okay, let me say this, all right? I couldn't say this 4 months ago, but the chief does not have any command authority. None. Not in this new Army. But yet he controls every behavior that I want to command. All right? The command controls back, right? So we command, he controls through a broad range of resources and people and functions. That's the best way I can express it. Now, there are going to be decision authorities that the chief has on my behalf, and we're still working those out because we're new in the relationship. We're new in the relationship. But the chief controls. That's the best way to understand it. He controls the behaviors that we want to command. All right, and then the land component commander, Brigadier General Grennan. Now look, I would shy away and kind of be a coward if we didn't talk about the land component commander. Many, many, many of you in this room have questioned what the role is of the land component commander in our Army. Well, I'm going to try to provide it for you in specific terms. Brigadier General Grennan is representing our Guard as the senior Guard advisor at the National Training Center rotation this summer. He is representing Guard Nation. He's engaging on behalf of the Adjutant General with FORSCOM generals, with TRADOC generals, with generals in NTC. He has a specific role with the 81st Brigade based on his experience and credibility to help coach, teach, and mentor those commanders, to be there on the ground with them and ensure not just Washington is represented the right way at the National Training Center, but the Guard is represented the right way. And he has that role. He's also the senior rater to the battalion commanders in the 81st Brigade. After NTC, that role will change. He was honored to be selected as the Deputy Commanding General of Fort Sill. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. He'll also, of course, have a general officer role here in the state. But the traditional command relationship that we've kind of worked on back and forth about land component command inside this Army will change. We've talked about it many times and we're still shaping it. So that's what you need to know about the role of the land component commander and Brigadier General Grennan. What you also need to know about that man is that he is a counselor to me, he is a mentor to me, and he is a great friend of mine. And just like you ain't going to see any daylight between me and him, you ain't going to see any daylight between me and General Grennan. I talked to him yesterday, and much of the pitch that you're going to hear throughout the day was formed by me and him over a couple beers and a pizza. All right, any questions about this command team?
Hey, sir.
Yeah.
SMA Grinston was here yesterday. We had a couple of people that were actually able to attend, right? Yes. Sergeant Major Hagmeyer, Sailor, and Sergeant Major Twaddell. So we had a couple of people in the audience, right? So those who were there will understand this. This is our squad.
Absolutely.
Those who weren't there, I'm going to challenge you to go on, what is it called, Divids? Check out the video, listen to it. Phenomenal. Coming from E6 or E5 through E7 on where the Army and where the Sergeant Major of the Army is trying to move the mentality across the board. And you'll see that it resonates pretty much with what we're going to say today.
They can also get it on U.S. Army's Facebook as one of their videos.
There you go.
Perfect.
U.S. Army Facebook.
So this is our squad. We're going to know who these people are in our squad. We're going to know what their families are doing. We're going to know what their struggles are. We're going to support them in their achievements. We're going to make sure they stay in the Guard. We're going to make sure, well, except for maybe one of them, we're going to make sure they're weapons qualified and APFT compliant. That's what we're going to do in our squad. Next slide. All right, we want to just tell you a little bit, tease a little bit about the leadership stuff. Most of you, if you haven't received the leadership philosophy, your commanders have it. All right? And I strike out the word philosophy because it's a weak word in the context of leadership. I like behavior. I like behavior. I think units behave the way we want them to behave, the way we lead them to behave. These are some of our behaviors that are couched in that leadership philosophy. Look, winning matters. It's the new thing in the Army, but it's everything, right? Winning matters. Because if you look at that term, that means we've defined what's important, we know how to keep score, we're holding people accountable to competition. Winning matters. Speaking of winning, I'd like the recruiting battalion commander to come up here. She's going to recognize a couple of folks, a couple of units that are winning.
So we created the retention award to recognize the units who have excelled in retaining the talented and trained soldiers of the National Guard. We looked at more than just reenlistment success rate. We looked at the quality of the extension. We looked at the number of first-term obligors, those in their first enlistment window. We looked at the length of the extension and the quality of the effort that went into making that extension. And then we looked at what went into the command team's efforts to help this state grow its most important and skilled guardsmen and keep them in the force. The 2019 company retention unit of the year at the company level is Bravo Company, 1st of the 161st Infantry.
Woo! We got the commander of First Sergeant out there. There you go.
You have to come up here.
Good job, sir.
And at the battalion level, 341st Military Intelligence Battalion.
If I could really quickly just say that I really appreciate all of your support. We are winning this year in recruiting battalion. My NCOICs are killing it, but we couldn't do it without all of the support of the units on both retention and recruiting efforts, so thank you.
Great. Okay, trust and integrity. Trust is built on integrity. Those of you who have been in my counseling sessions know I see integrity in two ways. One's easy and one's hard. All right, the first one is truthfulness in word and deed. That's easy, y'all got it. All right, most of the people in this world have it. Second one's hard. That's in an organization, you leading an organization that does what it says it's going to do. That's a different thing. It's harder, but it can erode trust just as easy. Integrity is built on trust. And then the family. You know, one of the things that Sergeant Major and I, as we started working through this soldier first, soldier centric concept, is the connection to the family. We're going to try to find a way to express it in a real way, which is why we're spending a lot of time over at JSS lately, figuring out what they do for our formation and trying to connect them to you. The importance of the family. Sergeant Major?
So, along with the importance of the family, when we talk about philosophy and behavior, so we both have the same leadership or desires to have the same leadership behaviors within our formation. My top three are mentorship. So we're not going to be here forever. Who's going to replace us? Who's the next soldier to fill these boots? Doesn't matter. We need to reach down in our formations and start mentoring our replacements. Take them under our wing. Show them how we were successful. how we got to where we were at. Because nobody, absolutely nobody that wears this uniform was solo getting there. Because we're all one team, one fight. Coaching. Under coaching, sounds similar to mentorship, but coaching, you're really going to let them fail from time to time. But you're going to point them in the right direction. Self-discovery, right? And then the last one, I call it the ladder. How did I get to where I'm at? Somebody along the way reached down and said, hey, here's how you get to the next step. Here's the schools that you need to get to this step. And somebody at the bottom was like, hey, you're awesome. You need to go up higher. I think they were full of shit, but I'm just being honest, right? So somebody's pushing, somebody's pulling you up the ladder till you get to the top rung. Once you get to the top rung, hey, or you get to as high as you're going to achieve, and you know that's as high as you're going to achieve, thank you very much. I enjoyed my service. It's time for me to go home. Everybody's served honorably so long as you're moving up the ladder. So don't take offense to you get to a certain point and you know it, and you say, hey, this was awesome. It was a great ride. Lasted 20 years, lasted 10 years, however long it lasted. Thank you. But along the way, pull somebody up the ladder with you.
Yeah, who was Sergeant Major? The fourth tenet of that document, and you got in your hands there, is leader development. I'll talk more about that later. All right, personal courage and moving forward together. Look, as the commanders in this room and the staff in this room that I've counseled know, I crave feedback. What we need to do, though, going forward together is be honest with each other. Sounds so simple. We just need to be honest with each other. Whether it's commander to subordinate, whether it's leader to leader, peer to peer. And demonstrate that kind of personal courage. I'm telling you right now, we want feedback. We want to know when things aren't rolling out the right way. We want to know when we're about to screw something up really bad. We want to hear from you. You have a crazy frame of reference and experiences. It's the strength of the Guard. There's people in here with jobs I can't even comprehend that come together and have a frame of reference. And if we listen to it, we get stronger and sharper and better. And we're telling your commanders that we want it. I'm telling all of you that we want it. We want that feedback. We want that honesty because we're going to be that way with you, even if it's awkward. Even if you're sitting in my office. And I got to show you how I see the world. And it's awkward and it's uncomfortable. But you know what? It's going to be honest. We're going to make that step and we're already started. But as we bang these things around, at the end, you're going to know when we decide on something. And then we go together. And then we go together. We cannot afford for our organization to be brought to its knees by dissent from a decision that was made, a decision that was lawful. We feel like if we open it up for candid, honest feedback, we value it, then when we decide, we go together. That's the way we're moving out. All right, that's the leadership behavior stuff. Much more to come. Next slide. All right, I want to talk about, in the context of a leadership philosophy or behavior, some pet peeves. So in the vein of honesty, I'm going to be honest with you about a few things. I don't like negative people. There's only one place I can be negative. Where's Jack at? Right? Or Chief. It's on a golf course, all right? A really negative guy on a golf course. But look, in the context of my work world, I do not like negativity. I can't stand it. You can see the power fade out of me and out of a room when you're negative. Do not conflate negativity with criticism or feedback. Different things. I don't see them that way at all. But that perpetual negativism, that perpetual lousy body language, it kills me, right? I don't like it. I don't like it. Not against the reg, but I don't like it. I don't like laziness and excuses. Most of our shortfalls that we talk about, you sum it up at the very end, it's laziness and excuses. Don't like it. I don't like it. We're going to stand tomorrow morning on some hallowed ground, soon to be hallowed ground. When you hear some of those names called off, I want you to think about laziness and excuses. I don't like it. I don't like unprepared public speaking. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that before. But Josh, or soon to be G5, he challenged me, be vulnerable and thinking about stuff, and he's giving me all all this reflection stuff to read. I don't like unprepared public speaking. You know why? See bullet 2. It's lazy. You're standing up in front of a formation, or you've been given the honor to preside over retirement or a promotion. Prepare your public speaking. Because the families that are listening, the soldiers that listen, they want it, they demand it, right? Prepare yourself. All right, don't get all nervous. I know we're going to grow in this. We're going to grow in this together. But I don't like unprepared public speaking. I don't like sloppy representation of our Guard. Again, may not find this in a reg, just me. What do I mean by that? When you're out in public, all right, not working in John's shop or tramping around the Elkwoods, but when you're out in public, right, you're traveling, you're on flight 4 to, from SeaTac to DC. I want you to look like a soldier and a guardsman if Patty Murray comes up and says, hey, aren't you in the Guard? Or if your soldiers' parents, you happen to run into them at Safeway and say, hey, aren't you in the Guard? Is my son or daughter in your unit? You need to represent the Guard and the Army and being a soldier. I don't like sloppy representation of that. I don't like folks that travel at the airport that are unshaved, that don't look like a soldier and a guardsman and a leader. Not that big a deal to you as a person, but it's a big deal to the people you interact with, because it's a snapshot they have of you as a guardsman and as a soldier. I don't like it. I don't like being sloppy. I don't like leaders that don't read. Read Mattis's book in there, he says the same thing. Reading keeps us from making amateur mistakes. You see in the leadership philosophy there at the end, they talk about mistakes. How I don't hold yours against you, you don't hold yours against me, we grow together in mistakes. Well, listen, we shouldn't make amateur mistakes, and we can overcome them by connecting to doctrine and by reading. I don't like leaders that don't read. Now, if I come up to you and I say, what have you been reading lately? There ought to be something, all right? Every couple of months, 5 or 6 a year at least, you're reading something about the profession. There's a couple that I'll throw out at you. The G5 is going to work on a CG's reading list that he's going to publish. There's already some good ones on that list, but a couple I'll throw out at you. One is Hesselbein on leadership. Some of you know me well know that I'm a huge fan of Hesselbein. Hesselbein is powerful stuff. The supreme leadership mentor coach to 4 stars in the DOD. They named the Peter Drucker Leadership Institute after Hesselbein. Hesselbein was a CEO that started as a volunteer. Anybody know Hesselbein? I think she's 105 years old today. She's about this tall. Little old lady that started as a volunteer of a Girl Scout troop. Became the CEO of Girl Scouts of America. Phenomenal leader. And her book, Hesselbein on Leadership, is everything where we're going. About how to treat soldiers and how to be and not how to do. All right, second book that I'll offer up to you today real quick is Simon Sinek's book on why. Asking about the why. Start with why. I know many of you probably heard the TED Talk. This book doubles down on that, right? About the why. Our soldiers demand this why, and we'll talk more about that later. All right, and the last thing I don't like, pet peeves, is labels. All right, so I'll be vulnerable here. I don't like these labels. I don't like labels that you're an AGR, you're on a gravy train. It's easy for you. You're a traditional officer or leader. It's easy for you. You don't have to move this machine. You're not a ranger, you're not a real infantryman. You're an artilleryman, you can only command small organizations. You're an aviator, well, I'll stop that one. They're lazy. Labels are lazy. You want to outsmart me, outsmart me. You want to out-tough me, out-tough me. Don't put a label on me. Ladies and gentlemen, you start putting those kind of labels out there, that you got to be this, you got to be that. We hear them all the time, right? You can't do this because you're this label on you. You're one step away from saying that you're too much of a female, too much of a male, you're too different colored. You're one step away from that label. Don't do it. I don't like it. I don't like labels. Performance, I like. Questions? Now's your time about these pet peeves. All right, next slide. I don't think we haven't scared them, have we, Sergeant Major?
Nope.
All right,
We're good.
that's not coming.
We're good.
That's not coming till tomorrow.
Yep.
All right.
In the morning.
All right.
6:25, first mile.
So let's talk about this vision. Let's talk about this vision. Most of this document that you have, but the document is just a document, right? So we're going to talk about some ideas today, some tenets, and kind of where the Sergeant Major and I want to go. But that quote up there again by Seneca, old dead guy, kind of captures this. We got to figure out where we want to go. And this document helps, I think, help us do that. And I reached out to a small group of folks that helped this in the beginning. We're installing a G5 team to kind of formalize this. Using Lieutenant Colonel Daly's brain right back from Sam's to help us do that in a broader team. But the way I see it is that the leadership behaviors that the Sergeant Major and I have gave birth to this document, right? This foundation and tenets we're going to talk about. That is going to drive a set of things and a strategy to assure that we achieve our end state. And we'll talk about the end state. Talk about the end state.
So let's not confuse what we're about to talk about. Because as we get into this, some of you are going to see these simple terms and simple phrases, and you're going to say, simplistic. It is. It's simplistic so the lowest level understands what we're getting after. As leaders, it's going to be probably the most challenging thing that you undertake. So let's ready to dig into them, sir?
Here, Born, just to finish up a couple things here. You can read the current OE. It's tough for us right now. There's challenges out there, but I'm telling you, there's opportunities out there. There's opportunities out there, Tom Wargo. There's a DeVarty on the plate. All right? There's opportunities out there. But it's tough for us right now. I get it. But I wanted to put the mission statement up here. All right? Penned by the Sergeant Major and I. You've seen other ones. We pinned this one. I want you to look at the word that's highlighted in red. In every formation, look at that word. That's an acknowledgement from me to you that we have two higher headquarters. We just do. We have the governor, the elected officials, and the citizens of this state. They are a higher headquarters as sure as I'm standing there. And the Adjutant General cares deeply about it, and that's why he has deployed and built you could argue, a nationally leading joint team. And he cares consequentially about things like catastrophic planning, wildland firefighting. Because he knows he's got that higher headquarters. And I'm acknowledging it to you, it's there, okay? And we also have the Department of the Army, higher headquarters. You will not hear a lot of senior leaders in Guard states saying that. But I'm telling you, my mouth to your ears. The Department of the Army is our higher headquarters. We use the National Guard Bureau and Army National Guard as a conduit to them, but they are our higher headquarters. We are in the Army. We, as a unit, as a state, all of us in this room volunteered to do it. We took an oath to be here, and we are a subordinate headquarters. That's the way I see it. We have two higher headquarters. If you don't believe that as a Guard state, we have a higher headquarters in the Department of the Army, go upstairs and look for the 66th Theater Aviation Command. We got a higher headquarters. So these things are consequential, right? It's consequential the way we behave and execute for the TAG on behalf of the domestic mission, and the way we behave and execute on our federal mission. It's not an either or. It's not a do less of this and more of this. It is both. It is both. Any questions about that? That's a really fundamental thing. Our formation has chewed on itself, over the past several years on this idea. There are two things that we have to execute because we're in the Army. All right, next slide. One chain of command. That's the foundation that starts this whole thing. I told you at the beginning that Brigadier General Grennan is a mentor, counselor, and friend of mine. He and many others highlighted to me over time that we have grown far too out of balance when it comes to the full-time force, the AGR force versus the traditional force. Well, leaving here today, the Sergeant Major and I, we have one chain of command. It's already started. It's already started. We no longer have a chain of powerful AOs and chiefs and G3s, readiness NCOs that have in some cases more authority than battalion commanders. One chain of command. At echelon, leadership authority pushed all the way down. It goes hand in hand with our leader development tenet. One chain of command. And guess what? That's making people real uncomfortable right now. As Josh would say, we're plucking the spider web. We're going to do this. We're going to make steps at this. This man right here already has. And it's pissing off a few people along the way. We're going to fight to achieve greater balance. And when I say balance, that's what I mean. This is not a suppression only of a full-time force. This is a rise in authority and power of our entire force. So lieutenants that show up for drill don't take a script handed to them by some supply NCO. This is a rebalance. We're going to do it. We're going to take steps at doing it. It's going to take time. And I've asked certain individuals in this room to be very skeptical and to challenge me on, because we're so ingrained in it right now we don't even know the things that are happening to us in this out of balance place. But I got some sensors out there, and we're going to try to make some steps. Stop some of these crazy things we're doing. Moving officers and NCOs without chain of commands, even, not to mention not having decision space, but not even knowing about it. We'll stop it. All right, next slide. All right, I'll do the first one. Sorry, Major, you got the second one. Soldier first. Soldier first. It's important you understand what we mean by these 6 tenets. So if you don't understand something we're saying in these 6 tenets, ask a question. Soldier first. It's an individual thing. Soldier-centric is a behavior for an organization thing. Soldier first is an individual thing. How many of you volunteered to be in the Army? Every one of you. How many of you took an oath to serve? Every one of you. Soldier first. That means a connection to 3 things at least. Values, the lifeblood of our profession. The lifeblood of our profession. Values. Standards. And toughness. Physical, mental toughness. It's a connection to those 3 things that you cannot separate, regardless of what job or assignment you have. You're soldiers. There's a reason you joined the Army, and not the Air Force or the Coast Guard or the Navy. There was a reason. Something back there that you wanted to be a soldier. It's got to mean values, standards of toughness. You can't separate the 3 things. We want to reconnect you to that, and then you reconnect our entire formation to that. It's at the beginning of this. We talked to the commanders about training plans, how we're going to reconnect back to the basic soldier and stuff. To connect them to an identity. Right? The long line that came before them about being a soldier. All this builds to the last tenet about this identity. Soldier first. Toughness. You can't separate the toughness component. Remember that second bullet about my pet peeves? Look, I appreciate the folks in this room that have soldiered for a long time and bodies are tearing down or they've been blown up a bunch of times. I appreciate that. But look, for the vast majority of us, right? We can soldier. We can motivate and inspire and be tough, physically and mentally tough. Sergeant Major Abby West was one of the toughest humans I've ever been around. And in her best days, probably couldn't run a 6-minute mile. But you know what? The toughest, most resilient human I've been around. That's soldiering. You got to connect to those 3 things, and that's what soldier first means. Sergeant Major.
So let's talk soldier-centric. Remember back when we started this, I was like, who was here in the 80s? Who was here in the 90s? Who here had squad books? Had soldier data sheets? Had that type of information and knowledge about their soldiers? So what we're asking you to do is have that type of knowledge about your soldiers. Now we want you to take and put on the soldier lens when you make decisions. How does it affect that soldier? How does it affect that family? It doesn't matter if they're single or married, have significant others. Look at it from the soldier's perspective. How does it affect them? As you make decisions. I'm not saying don't do training. Oh, hell no, I ain't saying that. I'm saying look at it from the soldier's perspective. How many childbirths do we have when we're not in combat? How many graduations, weddings, once-in-a-lifetime events that only happen, that happen year-round, don't get me wrong, but we're not in combat. We're not shooting bullets at people. We're shooting at paper targets. You have the ability to make those decisions. Look at it from the lens of the soldier. What's the impact on the soldier and his or her family? How do we mitigate that? And know your soldiers.
Yeah, soldier-centric, right? So he hit the key part there. Every action, all right, every action, echelon, staffs, commands, all the way down, every action has to be with the understanding of what does it mean to the soldier and his or her family. If you can't assess that, then stop acting. I'm talking about policy. Rage against this machine. I'm going to tell you that specifically in a second. Look at what you're doing in terms of the soldier and his or her family. Somebody explain to me why we have so many GO bachelors and bachelorettes in our Army. In our Guard, the strength of our Guard, we send these NCOs away for a promotion and we separate them from their spouse and their kids. Why? It's happening in your formation right now. Is that soldier-centric? Is that playing to the strengths of the Guard? Hell no, it's not.
But what's our probably number one thing that we see in our office? Sharp-related incidents. Where do most of them stem? Start at the GO bachelor, bachelorette arena. So as a way to kind of mitigate this, we're relooking the AGR system. But we have some rules. Can't be unethical, can't be illegal, can't be immoral. So yes, there's some growing pain associated with all of this, and the G1 and HRO, AGR, HRO, and some of the units are already feeling it. But it's truly getting after that principle, that tenet.
Yeah, we're ripping all that out. Look, we got to provide more predictability, better communication. We've got to build trust. We've got to build trust, right? We build it by thinking about them. When we think about training plans, how many AT days? How many IDT days? What you're doing with your different taskings that you get. From the beginning behavior, before an action starts, what does it mean to the soldier and his or her family? Assess it and determine what it meant to the soldier and his or her family. If you can't have that dialogue as a command team and a staff, stop, all right, and get help. We've got to do this. If we do this right, we will start to build some trust. It's a communication thing, and it's an understanding thing, and we've got to play to the strengths of the Guard. We've got to provide more predictability and better communication. The Chief of Staff just rescinded every policy in our Army. Anybody hear that? Stopped it. Rescinded. And we're going to rewrite them with, guess what? What's in the best interest of the soldiers and his or her family. We're going to build trust. Questions of those top two, the biggest ones. This isn't just the Army level either. I'm expecting this to happen at the company level, which is why you're sitting here. Because fundamentally, your soldiers don't stay in this Guard or this Army because of me or the Sergeant Major. They stay in because of what happens down there in that squad and platoon. Okay, brilliance in the basics and the approach to training.
Sir.
Yeah, please.
We got a question. Give him a mic.
Sir, Capmams, are these referenced in precedent, sir? Do you want like 1, 2? Are these more important than the ones below? Do you have any order
No.
to these, sir? No?
Not at all. You're going to hear me say the 6 tenets to Nirvana statement. That's the one we're building to. And look, I should have said up front, that's an insightful question, but I'll answer it in a different way. I'm really not sure what this document is. We call it a vision thing, but it's kind of a behavior thing. It's kind of a leadership thing. It's kind of a directive thing. We modeled it after the best thing that I could resonate with. We went through a bunch of different iterations of it. So I acknowledge some of the really good feedback I got. Got some really good feedback from Bill Cooper about this. And we're so excited to get something out, we just got it out, right? But it speaks to your point there. It's not hierarchical. But the sixth one, that's where we're going. All right, brilliance in the basics is an approach to training. All right, so I was reading, a couple weeks before taking command, I'm reading Mattis's book, Call Sign Chaos. Great book. He has this thing in there, he talks about what it means to be a Marine. What you get when you pull a Marine off the shelf. And then you put 9 of them together and you got a Marine squad. Then you put some of those together and you got a platoon and a company. And he built on it. And then he talks in his book about the reserve component, about how we should master this space because we are resource constrained. We should master the things that we can master to iteration and retraining. So Sergeant Major and I started talking about this, brilliance in the basic things. What does it mean? We're both old timers. We love the 8-step training model. Last 2 steps are evaluate and then retrain. So we want to pick tasks that we can master at iteration, that resonate with our soldiers. Now that's a nuanced thing. That's something that's easier to visualize with the dark rifles, harder to visualize with the dragons, right? But we're going to try. We're going to try to have this dialogue, and it's already started in training. But brilliance in the basics approach to training. And what goes along with that is the risk that we are going to underwrite on some of the hard, complex things so that you can master those things that connect to soldiering, that connect to leader development, that connect to all of these tenets. And we're going to be right in that space with you. We already are with the battalions, building their training plans. Anything you want to add on that, Sergeant Major?
So when we talk brilliance in the basics, right? Some people are like, well, we're talking about building that individual soldier, developing their skill level until they can instruct that skill level. Train it until you can teach it. If you can train it until you can teach it, you've mastered it. Now change the environment. Train it until you can teach it. Well, what am I doing about my squad leaders, my team leaders, my platoon sergeants, my PLs? While your soldiers are training, you're training your leaders. How to resource it, how to control it, how to feed them. All of those things are still going on at the same time. Well, what about my staff if I'm working on a single soldier? Well, your staff is still building your products, developing your training model. Everybody's still getting after what they're supposed to actually do and what their function is at echelon. We're just telling you to master the individual skills. The huge collective stuff, if you're truly looking at platoon and above, you're looking at something we're probably going to do at a MOB site. That squad, maybe platoon ops. Get after it. Until you can teach it, train it.
So this is a tough thing for the entire formation because it's a lot different. It's a lot different in different places, right? You know, the 56 building over there, the brilliance in the basics means a different thing. But as we talk about it, we're still resonating with commanders on what this means. Define those things that you can master at iteration. And know that you've got a command team involved. We said at the beginning you got one chain of command. Well, guess what? We're going to command. We're going to command at echelon. We're going to be with you in these decisions about training and about mobilizations and about a lot of things that have been taken for granted in terms of the decisions you've made before. We're going to be right with you.
And sir, we're going to accept the risk.
Absolutely.
Excuse me.
Absolutely. So we want to end the days of NGB is giving you 60 days to get to this level. Well, guess what? We get a vote. Because of the dialogue that we've had about training and where we want to go. Because we've got to do those things. We've got to do those things. Brilliance in the basics. Connects to soldiering. And it's going to connect to the fourth one I'm going to talk about here in a second. Any questions on the top three? Please, go ahead, Chief.
Hey, sir. Excuse me if I may. So, when we talk about fundamentals, the basics and stuff, the last 2 steps are to evaluate and then make that determination on whether you're going to train or retrain those individuals. How are you going to do the evaluation process? What is the expectations of doing that evaluation process? Do you have the right leaders in the right place to actually do that evaluation to make that determination? I agree with what you're saying, but that's, as I hear you, that's the one thing that comes to mind is how are we going to evaluate to make the determination whether they're trained or whether they need to be retrained?
Yeah, great question, Chief. That is command teams at echelon that have to do that. The dialogue that we've started with commanders, battalion commanders, I've kind of flew over the top of the MSCs, right? MSCs are pretty much cooked, right? They're all senior folks, they're running large organizations. We're working with battalions, right? And we have this dialogue about basic tasks. And we haven't entered a contract yet. In fact, we haven't approved a single plan yet. We've started a dialogue about training. We see it that way because this is a living, breathing thing when it comes to training. We're going to agree upon these tasks and then move forward to execute them. But the command teams at Echelon have to make an assessment, entering into an event, coming out of an event, whether they've truly trained that thing they wanted to train. And what I believe, in my frame of reference, that we do a lousy job at in the Guard is assessing and retraining. We all drive to the horse blanket. We know we got 15 days AT or 21 days AT, and NGB tells us we got to get to here, so what do? We fill up the first 16 days, we say we got 3 days left for this, and we execute it. Without understanding that what if we have a struggling squad or platoon in the first 5 days, and we've got to recock the whole thing? Or we have a struggling IO team that has to be reset through an STX. That's what we're talking about, Chief, is agree upon the task, evaluate it with, command teams going to have to do this outside of some other external thing, and don't be afraid to retrain it, to recock, understanding that there are resource issues and there's predictability issues for our soldiers. But you're going to know in the contracts that we make with battalion commanders this summer, the tasks that we've agreed upon. They're going to resonate with soldiers, and they're going to be tasks you can do at iteration and master. Any other questions about top 3? It all goes into the 4th one, about leader development. Sergeant Major and I want to completely reauthorize the authority of sergeants and lieutenants and young captains. We're telling your commanders this already. So the reason you're here, cutting through the fog, skipping echelon, as Mattis says, communicating through echelon, is to tell you that we want you to empower and develop leaders at echelon, the lowest level. And we're telling you that it's okay if you make mistakes, if they trip up, if something goes wrong. Because that's what's going to happen. As we take our formation and get rid of the roll-on, roll-off stuff and power it down to the lowest echelon, they're going to stumble at first, but they're going to be empowered and they're going to have buy-in. It's okay to do that. We're going to write that risk for you. We want sergeants. I want squad leaders to be empowered to do consequential things. That's the only way this whole thing is going to work. If we empower that squad leader to execute consequential missions for his squad. And the same with the platoon sergeant and the lieutenant. Knowing that they'll probably make that little mistake at the beginning. Mistakes when they're that young and they're that small are a lot better. They're usually a lot better to overcome. But it's just a method to our madness. When we empower them and value them and show them that they have the authority, and then connect to them re-enlistment success of their squad, connection and communication to their families, the overall total soldier care of their squad. It all matters then. Re-enlistment success to us is a 900 or 1,000 soldier problem. Re-enlistment success to one of your emboldened and valued, empowered squad leaders is an 8 soldier problem. Who do you think's got a better chance of keeping those 8 soldiers in the Guard? That's what we're talking about with leader development. This isn't just lip service. We're going to lead in this space through LPDs and assessment. Assessing how you're doing this from the bottom up. We've already working our roadshow right now talking to troops. And what we're talking to them about is that piece of it. Are you valued? Are you doing important things? When you look in your rearview mirror driving away from drill, do you want to come back? That's leader development. Sorry, Major?
So leader development, course, PME, right? Getting in those courses. The first quarter of this year, there was roughly 1,500 PME courses, NCO side of the house, PME courses canceled in the first quarter. Seats not used, either for just didn't ship or didn't meet the APFT standard. Holy crap. We have soldiers in our formation that are dying to go to PME, but we're sending people who really don't care, don't want to go. And that number's Guard nationwide. Last year alone, there was roughly 4,000 soldiers in Guard Nation that didn't ship to either BLC, ALC, or SLC. That's kind of big numbers. And it makes it difficult for us as a state to go back to NGB and say, hey, I need this seat, or I need a specific number of seats in this class, when they look at us and they say, well, you didn't use the 5 we gave you last year, or the 10 we gave you last year. So I'm empowering you as leaders, go through the checklist, make sure they're fit, make sure they're packed, make sure they're ready. Make sure you have an alternate. Somebody doesn't ship, the next person ships. We use those seats. Let's make NGB or Guard Bureau give us more seats, because we have more soldiers than we have seats. But we have to show usage. PME is not the only leader development. It's the challenges that we give to our young soldiers. It's the relationship that we as NCOs have with officers, our job to mentor and coach and develop that platoon leader at the E7 level, E6 level. To develop the captain, company commander, at the first sergeant level. That leader development does not stop at the battalion level or at the brigade. It continues. We go into an office, we close the door, we have an open and honest conversation as a chain of command. We'll disagree.
All the time.
But when we come out the other side, we have the same voice. You need to practice and teach that in your leader development down to the lowest echelon. Because that relationship, officer-NCO relationship, is a marriage. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, but at the end of the day, when you go to discipline the kids, you're going to have the same voice, right? So develop that young. Start it at the platoon level or lower.
How's your relationship, Sergeant Major? You doing okay? Sergeant Major said the 4-letter word, PME. What's more important, PME or AT? PME or NTC? Ooh. Every one of you should have said PME. Find me a pocket that's saying something different. They're out there. I can't know them all. PME. What I say about the first one? The first two things, got to build trust, right? There's no trust when we roll this out to our formation, all right? That it's going to be soldier first and soldier centric, and then we say, but you got to go to NTC instead of this, you got to cancel your course. But you got to go do this, and you got to cancel your last, quarter in college. Does that sound very soldier centric or soldier first to you? I'm the one that writes the risk, so bring it to me if you hear it. Soldier first, soldier centric. Brilliance in the basics. Leader development. Speaking of soldier first, by the way, one of the main reasons we wanted everybody to hear this message is to know that we're at about 55% APFT compliant. That doesn't sound very soldier first. About the same in individual weapons qual, maybe a little less. That ain't very soldier first. I'm looking deep into these training plans to rewrite that ship. We'll talk about the other, some more ACFT stuff later. Questions on the top 4? I was all excited today for questions. All right, the fifth one. Planted in my brain by Matt and James. I had to work it out. General Milley, this came from General Milley. Matt used to have this thing on his door talking about mutual trust and shared understanding. And I pieced these 3 things together because I think they go together, right? Discipline, initiative, within intent is what we want. It's what we have to have in this Guard. It's what we have to have. I know Matt Braddock's not here today, but Viking 6 was here. He would tell you he's got to have it because he can't command from Olympia to Walla Walla without it. Disciplined initiative with intent. The problem is that generally the conversation ends there. That Raven 6 wants it, Excelsior 6 wants it, Falcon 6 wants it. But the 2 things that prop that up, the 2 things that enable that to happen are on that page. The first one is communicating through echelon, as precise as you can, to the place it needs to happen. Another reason why you're all here. this message, this vision statement, communicating through echelon at the most precise way you can, knowing that we're slaves to geography and time. That's why you got to have an assessment mechanism. The second thing that props up discipline initiative with intent is mutual trust and shared understanding. That's as much about the why as anything. Mutual trust and shared understanding. I'll give you an example that kind of resonated over the past year. When we started talking about the 4 Echo policy and strengthening the guard, keeping everybody in the guard, even in the way, even in advance of NTC and all the other demands. For something like, and that kind of misfired on us, right? Because out in the hinterlands, right, the message had been changed in a way so that I don't believe they understood the precise intent of the prior commanding general of our Army. And because there wasn't shared trust and understanding built in that message, it misfired in a bunch of different ways. So we've got to build the trust and understanding, right? We're all humans, we all want the why. We build that through acknowledging that we have a higher headquarters. We're in the Army. This is a consequential thing. We've got to do it for our readiness, our reputation. And we got to communicate it precisely. I use the example of the NTC cross level, which I'll talk to a little bit more later. That's a consequential thing. Having to order a few hundred soldiers in a relatively short amount of time to go help our endeavor as an Army of this state to go to the National Training Center. So as we worked through that process, we knew at the beginning we had to start with trust and understanding. So, and some of the commanders can attest, when we had those tough kind of calls about what we do, I invited the commanders to be a part of it, to hear it, in some hope of building trust. So they could see the numbers like I saw them. And we had a debate. We opened up a reclama period. And then we wrote an order. It was as precise as we could order from our words to communicate it to the force. And then knowing we wanted to talk to you about it today. So that precise communication and mutual trust and understanding is what you have to do if you have any hope of wanting discipline initiative with an intent. It just makes sense, right? They've got to know the intent. And then you get the buy-in by the trust and understanding. It's a huge part of this whole thing and how it rolls out. Any questions about that?
Let me put a warfighting spin on it for a second, sir. So, show of hands, who all's going to NTC? Awesome. Who here thinks they're going to have communication all the time? Whoa, look at that. I'm getting rained on. That's awesome. It's not going to happen. They're going to jam you. They're going to pull up in some, looks like a hoopty truck that belongs to the OCTs, park it, and you're not going to be able to talk to anybody unless you're standing there face to face with them. Is that going to stop the way the mission's going? I hope not. Our near-peer threats that are out there, they can shut down everything digital that we have. So we go back to the brilliance and the basics, right? Being able to execute at echelon, at the lowest echelon, meet the discipline initiative with intent. So going back to those 80s and 90s mentalities of how we would do our war fighting. That's what I'm trying to tie in and trying to get you to think about a little bit.
He's got 11 rotations at the National Training Center, by the way. Even though they were one at a time, every one at a time. Look, there's a reason why this 5th tenet's there. Are you ready for it? It's because you got to execute the top 4 for us. You've got to execute these tenets, this foundation, this document. 1 foundation, 6 tenets. You've got to execute because we go together. It's not illegal, immoral, against the regulation, unethical. Guess what? You volunteered to be here and took an oath. You got to execute this. And you're going to need disciplined initiative with an intent to do it. So I want you to understand moving forward, as you roll this out to your formation, which is what you're going to do. All right, your formations are going to become soldier first, soldier centric. You're going to be brilliant in the basics. You're going to develop leaders. You're going to have to use that 5th tenet to do it. That means you got to communicate it precisely, And you got to build trust and understanding around it. All right? Because the Borg is out there in the Washington Army National Guard. All right? They're resisting with the utmost. All right? All right, we're not going to let it happen. We're going to drive this thing through them, and we're going to use that fifth tenet to do it. And leaders in this room are going to do it. Going to do it because you have to. All right, sixth thing. The sixth tenet was written with a couple fingers of maker's mark, sitting back, looking on my back patio, thinking, this is it right here, the sixth tenet. Building winning units. Man, it sounds so simple, Sergeant Major.
It's at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? You wake up and it's like, got to go to work, got to do this. I want to get into it. I want to keep going. It's that motivation. The desire not to leave. Reason why Sergeant Major Ecclestone leaves at night before I do. No, I'm joking. It's what makes us want to come to work. If you don't enjoy your job, I love you. Thank you very much for your service. I love your family. Hang your hat up, go home. Because there's 10 more people that want what you have, at least.
Yeah, so the words in that sixth tenet in your paper there, right? So everybody pull their paper out and read that line, right? Read that line, because this is it. If we get this, we got it, right? We got it. I totally believe we got it. If we build winning units that have an Army identity, where soldiers are proud to serve, all right? Let's unpack that sentence. Winning units. That means we've defined what winning is. It's complicated. We're going to do this over time. It's going to happen within this strategy, all right? That's why the document says that. We're going to define it. I'm exactly sure what it is right now. The strategy is going to help us define it. We're going to build winning units. That means that we've defined it, that we know how to keep score, that we know what the rules are, and that it matters in winning in it. Winning units with an Army identity. That means values and standards. It's about us. We're soldiers. The ones that we've told to be soldiers first, and we've told them that we're going to be soldier-centric about them. And they're proud to serve. You think soldiers that are proud to serve in a unit that has an identity, that cares about them and their family, that connects them to the tradition of soldier in the Army, do you think those soldiers are going to re-enlist? Absolutely they're going to re-enlist. You're going to have E5 say, do not promote me out of this squad. And First Sergeant say, who are you sending to my outfit? They're going to have an identity. Master plan is to connect them back to that identity. Simple stuff. These 6 tenets are so simple. We talk about soldier first. We talk about those basic tasks. Basic individual tasks. Soldier-centric. We talk about organizations that have got programs built the right way, that handle those Army values, that can manage them. Questions about these 6 tenets? Hey, listen, we leave this room, we're going together on these 6 tenets. I told you up front, I'm a feedback guy, so is the Sergeant Major. Bring it on. There's something here you don't sound right, you need clarification, let's know now. Because we're going to decide, when these slides are done, we're deciding that we are going together. And there ain't no dissent then. Go ahead, soldier.
Hello, sir. Major Deary. Quick question. I know it applies to soldier-centric, but after we deploy a soldier or we send them off to NTC, what are we directly doing for their families, and how is that reflected in our tenets as outlined here? Even though they're implied in the second one, what are we firmly doing through the JSS and through the readiness groups at that lowest level to make sure their families are ready for the soldiers not to be there?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Colonel Brewer, you want to talk about the Yellow Ribbon program that's underutilized?
Well, in the context of NTC, though, I mean, it's not going to be a yellow ribbon thing. I mean, I want you to talk about yellow ribbon.
Yeah.
You can talk about that when you get up and
Yeah.
do your pitch. But I think what you're talking about is NTC?
Whether, sir, I can talk about that. Whether it be NTC, or you're going to an ODT, or you're going to the sandbox.
Yeah, well, okay.
Or you're going to home.
All right, that's perfect.
Okay.
Go for it, Chaplain. Talk about the yellow ribbon thing.
Yeah. Here, we're going to hook you up.
No, he's
sir.
right. He's connecting the yellow ribbon to the soldier care stuff you were talking about with families.
There you go.
Okay, let me collect my thoughts for a second. Okay,
On
so
the spot.
what I heard him say right here is based on what you see, that it's implied that it's family-centric as well, but it's not necessarily blatantly in the black and white of the words, okay? But I mean, what I'll say in my pitch in a little bit, I'm going to talk about the human domain and how it's more than just implied. Okay, it is laced in everything that happens here. As far as the yellow ribbon and the JSS, I mean, I'll just give my pitch now, if that's the case.
Go for
okay?
it. Go for
So
it.
I have a couple of quotes. And first of all, I was going to say, why in the world would the commanding general now talk about how important a chaplain is in this command team at this level, okay? Normally, the chaplains are seen as these old balding guys that are just kind of, there's a lot of old balding guys in here. Now, I mean, I'm better than my brother. But listen, my wife 2 years ago bought me Rogaine as a present for Christmas. And every day she asked me if I put it on, okay? So that's just where I'm at in my life at this stage, okay? So why a chaplain? We're typically seen as just these religious guys, and what do you expect of the command team? You want them to learn how to preach better or pray better? What's the deal? Well, there's something now called this human domain, and maybe some of you have heard that in Army doctrine. And I wanted to read you a couple of quotes. It says, since war is a fundamentally human endeavor, it is critical that commanders understand the human domain in order to build cohesive teams based on trust. The next one is this: the human domain is complex. Army leaders need empathy to better understand the experiences, perspectives, and feelings of people and thus make better decisions. Our soldiers deserve it, and our future success depends on it. The bottom line is we're no longer in an army that we just command and tell people what to do because they need to do it. Because there's a mission that needs to be accomplished. And all of us are old, well, most of us are old in here, and we come from that line of thinking, okay? But the new soldier nowadays, that's not the way they think. The human domain is different in understanding what makes a person tick, how they do feel. You don't necessarily have to care about it that much, because you have a paid person in your command that is paid to care and is paid to feel. And here's what's most important, is paid to help you understand how to connect with the human domain. Because whether you like it or not, that's the way our society is, that's the way our culture is now. And so tied to your question as far as, so how do I see how the family is integrated into this? The human domain is comprehensive in that it's not just the individual, okay? It is the individual and their loved ones and the people that make them tick. And no matter, and whether you're doing it on purpose or not, you collectively, your command team, you are building an identity in your unit. You understand that, right? It's an identity that either people want to be a part of or they don't want to be a part of. It's an identity that makes these people either want to come back to drill or they don't want to come to drill anymore. And that's how you as a leader implement these tenets comprehensively, not just for the soldier. And like General Dent said, that the decisions, whether it's policy, regulation, how you implement the policy and regulation, that this is going to encompass now how it affects the soldier's life, which includes their family. And it goes way beyond just the resources that we have. It goes way beyond merely what we have at the JSS. So you have this staff member that is integral in this idea of human domain and how you connect with people. And he had me at the end because I'm a preacher and he wanted me just to keep this to 5 minutes, but he just asked me to come up and do this earlier, okay? But I'm almost done. I want to ask just real quick. I always key in on words because words are important. And I wish I would have started from the very beginning. But what are just one-word themes, big theme ideas that you guys have heard just in the 50 minutes that you've been here? Trust. Share mutual understanding. Empowerment. Anything else? Feedback. Okay, so I got trust and feedback, mutual understanding as I started making tick marks as I heard these words. Those all involve human connection and human relationship. You can't get away from it. What he's talking about is being able to learn how to function as a leader in a new way. A new way that involves trust and feedback. And the way that he's used me and the way that you have an opportunity to use your chaplains is this, is to learn, and it's kind of a scary thing, but how do you elicit the feedback of somebody else that helps you to think in a different way? That in turn develops an identity in your unit, mutual trust and understanding.
Yeah.
The first time I ever heard, that I ever thought that we functioned in this way was, and I've never told you this, but it was during our first deployment. We were playing 3-on-3 basketball. And this was before he was a commander. He was the S3, all right? We were developing a friendship. This was before we started our hunting endeavors. And we had this 3-on-3. We were just playing, all right? And we had a team there at the deployment site. But it was this one afternoon, he and I were on the same team. And from my perspective, he wouldn't pass me the ball. And I was getting ticked off, okay? I started playing angry because I thought he purposefully was not passing me the ball.
Winning mattered, Chaplain.
What's that?
Winning mattered.
Oh my gosh.
Just set it right up for me. Put it on.
I think he's saying you can't.
So me as a chaplain, I decided to be vulnerable and do something that I wasn't necessarily used to at that point in time as a chaplain and as a leader. I decided to go to him and ask him, hey, what's the deal? Why wouldn't you pass me the ball? What was your perspective? What was going on in your head? And I could make fun of all those different things, but what happened in that little interaction, at least with me, is this working with baby steps and learning how to get feedback, vulnerable, and work in a way that trust is established. You know what? Americans aren't used to working in that way. Leaders in the Army are not used to working in that way. And everything that he's talking about right now, and learning how to move forward with mutual trust, shared understanding, is really, it's simplistic, and it involves the human domain and human connection. I just went a long ways from your question. But you have an opportunity, and you have a built-in staff member that can help you move forward in that way. Chaplains, we have complete and utter confidentiality, and you have the ability to work with somebody that can help give you feedback that might help you see something differently, that helps then develop shared trust and mutual understanding. Anything else that I can clarify? You wanted me to talk about yellow ribbon?
I'm going to answer his question, though.
You wanted me to say something about yellow ribbon?
Yeah.
So, hey, just real quick for yellow ribbon, and this isn't even my program, okay? But it has to do with human domain and connection with people. Okay, what's the first response in your head that anybody that's dealt with the yellow ribbon when I say yellow ribbon? What?
Mandatory.
Mandatory. Check the block. What'd you say? Oh, I thought you said a swear word in there.
Not Samir.
It's for commanders, it's mandatory, it's check the block, it's stupid, just tell me what to do and we can get it over with, okay? So here's the thing. We as Guard folks, especially in the environment that we're in the next 2 years as far as the deployments, and just anywhere in the future, okay? Very rarely do we as Guard folks have any interaction with families. Okay, it's very different. It's obviously different than active duty. Families are usually, I mean, even though I'm full-time, my wife has very little interaction with the Guard family, okay? The yellow ribbon, I won't use bad words, but as much as it's been not good for some of you, whatever your experience is, it is one of our only ways in which we can have a connection with the family, okay? And here's part of the problem, and it's a great example of how to take a discipline initiative with intent and building a winning unit. I've said for years that the commander, that the yellow ribbon is for the commander to do whatever he or she wants with that engagement, okay? If you use it as a check the block mandatory thing, I promise you it's going to suck. It's going to be exactly what you envision. But if you use your creativity, if you try to establish what you want for your soldiers and your family, and you know what your soldiers and your family needs, especially prior to deployment, those pre-deployment yellow ribbons, the sky's the limit as to what you can do with that. And you have the opportunity to bring families in and to create an identity within your unit that people might want to continue to want to serve in. So I just want to encourage you, this is what he's going to encourage you. Try to have skeptical doubt. Try to look at what you've typically done, how you've typically commanded, and doubt it or change it. Think differently about it. Think differently about Yellow Ribbon.
Yeah.
You guys can make it a great event for families in which they're look, you guys know this. My wife doesn't even know half of what the Guard has to offer, okay? It's the same with your formations. You can use these things. You can use the JSS in a way that the sky's the limit. And don't take no for an answer. Sorry, is the Yellow Ribbon coordinator in here, Captain DeFalco? If they say no, then you figure out how to do something to make this a great event for your soldiers and your families that is creating an identity in the Guard. So if you have any questions, hey, come and ask me about it, because I've seen it done well. I've seen commanders who have owned it, and it's been a fantastic event for their families. And it is a touch point to your families that can make a difference in your units. Okay, and that's just a tiny, small example. Any questions of me?
All right, thanks, Chaplain. All right, love you. All right, why are we talking about JSS and families and Yellow Ribbon and all this stuff? I told you in the second tenet. Every action from the lens of the soldier and his or her family. You got to know about their families. Mary Ann Hegg sitting right back there. She runs her family programs division. Okay? You got to know about their families. This stuff all connects. Okay? Now check this out, Major. You asked a question about, in these things like NTC and deployment, how do we ensure the families are taken care of? I'm going to use these tenets like a tool. All right? Because I've had a dialogue with Raven 6 and Raven 7 about ensuring soldier care and analyzing just on that ATO what it meant to the soldier and their family. Which is why we're going to talk to them at Raven Reception, why we've had a lot of debate about their equipment, about how we've talked to these two gentlemen about do not screw up the pay. All right, so we've had that discussion, all right? And as Raven 6 empowers his leaders and squad leaders and platoon sergeants to understand that concept, that they have to attend to the soldier and the family, right? And we develop those leaders in that way using those tenets. That's the only hope we have of really doing what you're asking to do. These tenets become tools that help us work through some of these problems. That's the way I see it. It's a pretty good answer, Sergeant Major.
I agree, sir.
All right, let's keep driving on. I'm going to get through a couple slides and we'll take a break. Next slide. There we go. End state. Where's the end state to all this? Another piece of insightful feedback about this document is the end state is not precisely defined. I think that's purposeful. So every time I get too far out in front of these guys, they pull me back. At this point, it's about trust. Not just with our soldiers, because that's expressed in there, but it's about trust with the Department of the Army, growing it, at least maintaining it, trust with our governor, our elected officials, our citizens, our higher headquarters, having strength and reputation and readiness to protect us against threats, whether that's loss of force structure or loss of trust or loss of reputation. But also strong enough to allow us to seize emerging opportunities. That's what we have to pass on. Now, the way I think what's going to happen is as we develop this strategy and publish it, these guys want a long time to publish it. We're impatient. We want it sooner than later, which is why the Chief's building a G5 team. We think is going to happen is that they're going to take this document and these tenets, and they're going to develop many behaviors underneath LOEs inside a strategy that are going to more precisely get us to end state. So instead of just saying in our current statement, strengthen readiness and reputation, it's going to have targets. It's going to say things like achieving, this period of time, 95% authorized percent fill, or 85% DMSQ. It's going to have those more precise things in there as a definition of end state. But that's where this goes. It goes to a strategy, a no-kidding strategy that will live and breathe and be assessed, that we will publish to our Army sooner than later. It says October on there. And between Matt and the chief and our new incoming G5, Lieutenant Colonel Daly, we're going to move out on this thing. I've already told them that let's get good enough out on the street. Let's get good enough out on the street and help us with these behaviors. All right, next slide. In the meantime, you've got to do this. You've got to do this. I'm talking to the captains and the first sergeants, right? I'm communicating precisely to you right now. All right, the preceding slides help us build trust and understanding. I'm communicating to you right now. Do this. Ask why. Ask why you're doing what you're doing. Why am I having this meeting? Why am I having this engagement? Why am I leaving this armory? Why am I whatever? And then rage against it. That's what Simon Sinek says in his book. Colonel Kelling gave me this book months ago, and I read it, and over the last couple of weeks, I've gotten up, literally one time last week, I got up in the middle of the night to reread a portion of it. I talked to the staff about it this week. You got to rage against this stuff and ask the why. Find it and communicate it. If you can communicate the why to your soldiers, you are a lot farther down the road in building trust. The suck becomes so much easier if you know the why. And the power of an identity becomes so much greater if you know the why. Your soldiers demand it. Gone are the days of thinking we can just do it. They demand it. I want them to demand it. Sergeant Major?
Hey, sir, can I ask you, why this audience? Why the commanders and the first sergeants?
Because we think, in fact we know, we're experienced, we've got a frame of reference. We know that if we have any hope of this stuff being executed for this Army, it's going to happen somewhere at your level or below. God bless your MSC and battalion commanders. But if we have any hope of this really hitting the ground and hitting this formation like a Cat 5 tomorrow, it's going to start with you. So we're taking a page out of Mattis's book, skipping echelon, and talking straight to you. Straight to you. Soldier first, reconnect them. Soldier centric, think about them. Behave for them. Master task, brilliance in the basics, develop your leaders, take the risk, let them do consequential things. Ensure your communication is the right way with the right intent. You assess it. And then we'll look back over time as this strategy rolls out to see if you've built a winning team that has an Army identity where your soldiers are proud to serve. That's why, Sergeant Major.
The winning team, that's that squad on squad, team on team, section on section events, the cannon runs, the best squad competition, you name it. That's the winning team. People fighting to get into your organization. Wake up motivated to come into drill. Wake up motivated to come to work. Exercise your chain of command. General Dent talked about, AGR, M-Day, traditional, technician, all those different chain of commands that we have out there now, they're gone. Commanders, first sergeants, be involved in your formations. Get your platoon sergeants, platoon leaders involved in those formations. Show the soldiers that we care. And like the SMA said, this is my squad. It's a great video. Take some time, just watch it, listen to it.
All right, next slide. All right, I'm going to hit these three things. I'm going to give you just a quick 10-minute break. First off, questions, all right? Questions about this document, or these 6 tenets? Hearing none, Sergeant Major. We go together. We go together. No dissent against these 6 tenets. One foundation. One chain of command. Agnostic of status. I don't care whether Excelsior 6 has AGRs, technicians, traditional soldiers. Don't care. His soldiers. They all just happen to be doing different things. All right, 3 things I want to bring up real quick and then we'll take a break. The NTC rotation. You'll notice the language in that ATO did not talk about sending soldiers to the 81st Brigade to help. Look, this is about our Guard, about our reputation, about the readiness and reputation of our Guard. Knowing full well that the soldiers that we send will get a great opportunity at NTC to learn something that very few states get to do. We've got to care for them through the process. Leaders at Echelon know the way we feel about this. But this NTC endeavor is an endeavor that we all are undertaking. All right? This is not about making Dan Bugbee eat a tasking of 40 soldiers to the 81st Brigade. Now look, my flowery words about this will mean nothing to the soldiers that are going unless you get them and explain this to them, which is why we're going to try to talk to them. This is about us, about our Guard, our reputation. We are all in this together. Forced through a bunch of, pressured systems to have to execute this summer. And we, through a lot of deliberation, with my higher headquarters, the Adjutant General, came up with some targets on kind of minimum thresholds of acceptable risk for that rotation. And we know we're taking some risk, particularly in the authorized percent fill, or PDY, of what that unit will have on the ground in NTC. But the message is it's about us. It's not just about one thing, not just about one unit. All right, ACFT. You've heard me say it before. Well, some of you have. I think we're lying to ourselves about the ACFT. I'll explain what I mean. Would you believe that we have soldiers right now that are contemplating leaving the Guard because of the ACFT? Stop it! You're hearing from me. Stop it. My staff knows the way I feel about it. Until we have equipped you and trained you and let you execute that task and iteration to master it, I'm not holding you accountable to it. I'm just not. I don't see a possible way where we could eject somebody from our Army in FY21 at this point. I don't see it possible. We haven't equipped them, we haven't trained them, we haven't let them master it at iteration. Hell, most of you are going to see it rolled out the first time tomorrow. Stop it. Press this down. Have them soldier up, work on their APFT.
How about let's just try passing the APFT?
Well,
The other 64% or 46% that hasn't taken it.
there's lots of stuff to talk about the ACFT and whether it's really hard or not. Look, I personally don't think it's that challenging to pass. What I'm telling you about is the program, right? Until we've equipped it, provided you access to it, trained your leaders on it. Look at the 8-step training model. When somebody can tell me that we've executed that 8-step, then I'll hold people accountable to the ACFT. Now here's the problem. When you go away, okay, the big Army, I think right now has some exit requirements for certain PME schools, right? And what we've got to do, Rainier 3 and Rainier 5, we've got to figure out, as we send our soldiers into those consequential things where the Army's saying they have to pass, then maybe we got to tiger team the hell out of it and get Captain Sims and guys like him around them to prepare them. Airborne. You know what I mean? So look, you're hearing it from us on ACFT. So stop this noise. We're up in Snohomish yesterday and we heard this, okay? We go together, all right? We're gonna train this task for our formation, and once we're at the leadership team, once the MSC commanders are comfortable that we've got it equipped, we've got it trained the right way, then we'll start holding people accountable. All right, last thing is recruiting force. How many of you know what it takes for a recruiter to get a senior badge?
That's the recruiter section, sir.
How many of you know what it takes for them to get a master badge? Why do they care about a master badge? Every hand in this room ought to raise. Shame on me for not understanding what the recruiters go through and do. You've seen the post that the Sergeant Major and I are out every month with the winning recruiter. This is our lifeblood, and we've got to understand it. You've got to connect to them. We tried this thing in March about connecting units to recruiters. Look, we've got to do this. We've got to find a more powerful way, Dan Westman, to help this formation connect to the recruiters. They're struggling. On some basic stuff they're struggling. On unit support and identity in the communities. I truly believe the vast majority of them right now are trying really hard. The machine is moving. But you've got to, as leaders, you company commanders out there, you've got to connect with those recruiters. This is a real thing. We've talked about it for a long time. It is real as it is as real as it gets. It's like this separate arm of our Army that's out there that we don't understand. I want to change it so that if you want to be a senior leader in our Guard, you better have been a successful recruiter as an officer at an NCO. I want that to be the truth 10 years from now. Because you're more powerful, you're more influential. What they are doing for you is incredibly powerful stuff. It's everything for us. And they're winning. They're winning in pockets. They're growing winning. But you can help them. Just with some simple stuff, you can help them. If you're a company commander, first sergeant in here, find your recruiter, connect to them. Don't wait on some task or some crazy matrix that comes from Building 1. All right? Find your recruiter in your area, connect to them, and ask them how you can help them. And maybe in that dialogue, you can shape exactly what they're trying to put into the formation. All right, I'm going to stop talking. You got 10 minutes. Back in your seats.